The twin suns hung above the sky of Kura's world, painting the wide valley with soft light. The grass grew tall and swayed in the wind, while the sound of flowing water came from a silver stream that cut through the land. In this valley lived the Kura, creatures with scales, sharp claws, and bright eyes that glimmered like polished stones. They were strong and proud, a people who raised their hatchlings to grow fast and fierce so that they could survive the dangers of the wild world around them. Among the many nests that season, one hatchling was different. His name was Riku. From the first day he cracked open his shell, the others noticed he was smaller than the rest. His scales were softer, his legs were not as quick, and his voice was gentler than the harsh cries of his siblings. While the others rushed to chase insects or wrestle with one another in playful battles, Riku often fell behind. He tried to keep up, but he always stumbled. When he finally reached the others, they had already moved on to another game. The elders did not pay him much attention. They were busy teaching the stronger hatchlings how to stalk, how to leap, and how to defend themselves against the many creatures that prowled the forests. The parents looked at Riku with quiet concern, but also with a kind of distance. In their eyes, he would either grow strong one day or be left behind by the world. They had seen many seasons and knew nature was not gentle. Riku did not fully understand these things. All he knew was that he felt alone. He would sit near the tall grass while the others laughed and snapped their jaws at insects. He would watch the sky where great birds glided and wonder if he too could rise above the ground if only he were stronger. One afternoon, after the hatchlings had gone to chase small lizards near the rocks, Riku wandered toward the stream. The water was clear and tiny fish darted back and forth in the current. He dipped his claws into the cool surface and felt the ripples spread out. For a moment he pretended the stream was his companion. He spoke to it in soft chirps, telling it how the others never waited for him, how he wanted to play and how he wished for someone to stay beside him. Of course, the stream did not answer. It only kept flowing. As he sat there, he thought of all the games he had seen the others play. He imagined himself running faster, jumping higher, and wrestling without fear. His chest warmed with hope, but the warmth faded when he remembered the way the others often left him behind. His eyes grew heavy, and he lowered his head against a smooth stone by the water's edge. Not far away, beyond the valley, lay a village built by human settlers. The humans had arrived seasons ago, bringing their machines, their domes, and their strange ways of shaping the land. Most of the Kura kept their distance, unsure if the humans were friends or strangers who would take too much. The humans, too, were cautious, knowing that the world was filled with creatures that did not always welcome them. Yet children did not always see the same boundaries as adults. In one of the domes lived a young boy named Taran. He was curious and restless, always wanting to explore beyond the safe fences of the village. His parents often warned him not to wander too far, for the land was wild. But Taran had a heart full of wonder. He wanted to see the world, to know its colors and sounds, and to discover things no one else had noticed. On that same day when Riku sat by the stream, Taran slipped out from the village with a small pouch of stones he liked to collect. He followed the path through the grass, his eyes searching for something new. The air was fresh and the wind carried the scent of flowers mixed with the earth. Taran smiled as he walked, each step bringing him closer to the unknown. When he reached the stream, he noticed the water sparkled like glass. He knelt down and tossed a stone into the current, watching the circles spread. As he looked across, he froze. On the other side sat a small creature with scales, bright eyes, and a thin tail that flicked slowly. It was Riku. Both stared at each other for a long moment. Riku had seen humans from a distance before, but never so close. His heart thumped in his chest. He wanted to run, yet something about the boy's face made him stay. Taran, on the other hand, did not feel fear. He only felt surprise and excitement. Carefully, Taran picked up another smooth stone. He placed it gently on the ground near the water and pushed it so it rolled into the stream. The stone made a splash and ripples spread once more. Taran laughed softly. Riku tilted his head. He watched the ripples, then glanced at the boy. Slowly, he reached with his claws for another stone. With effort, he dropped it into the stream. The water splashed again. Taran's laughter grew brighter. It was a simple act, but it carried meaning. For the first time, Riku felt as if someone wanted to share a moment with him. Not out of duty, not because of training, but simply because it was fun. He tried again, dropping another stone. This time, Taran copied him, and soon both were laughing as the water danced with ripples. The sun dipped lower. painting the valley in gold. The air cooled and shadows stretched long. Riku felt a warmth in his chest unlike any before. He did not know the boy's name, but he knew he had found something precious. Terran, too, felt a joy he had never experienced within the fences of his village. As the day ended, Terran rose and gave a small wave before heading back toward the village. Riku watched him leave, his tail flicking slowly. For the first time, he did not feel lonely. He had a reason to look forward to the next day. That night, Riku curled in his nest, dreaming of stones and ripples and of a boy with bright eyes who laughed by the stream. The next morning, the valley was alive with sound. The twin suns had risen, painting the fields in bright light. The air carried the hum of insects, the calls of birds, and the rustle of tall grass moving with the wind. Riku woke in his nest, stretching his small legs and shaking the dew from his scales. Around him, the other hatchlings were already running and chasing one another. Their voices rang sharp as they played, but none of them looked in his direction. Riku blinked his bright eyes and thought of the stream. He remembered the boy who had tossed stones into the water. He remembered the laughter, the sound of ripples, and the warmth he felt in his chest. The boy had not mocked him, had not left him behind. For the first time in his short life, Riku had felt noticed. The memory made him rise quickly. He left the nest and hurried across the grass. His small feet stumbled at times, but he did not stop. At the same time, in the human village, Terran was awake earlier than usual. His parents thought he would spend the morning near the garden or with the other children, but Terran's thoughts were far away. He could not stop thinking about the little scaled creature he had met at the stream. It had looked at him with wide eyes as if unsure of what he was. Yet it had stayed, and it had played. Terran tied his pouch of stones to his belt and slipped out of the dome. He walked quickly along the path that led out of the settlement. The guards at the edge were distracted, speaking to one another, so he slipped past them without notice. His heart beat with excitement. When he reached the stream, the water sparkled in the light just as it had the day before. He looked around, wondering if the creature would come. For a moment he felt doubt. Perhaps it had only been chance. Perhaps he would never see it again. But then he noticed movement in the grass. A small figure appeared, scales glinting, tail flicking. It was Riku. They stared at each other again, but this time there was less hesitation. Terran smiled, lifting his hand in greeting. Riku tilted his head and chirped softly. The boy knelt down, picked up a stone, and tossed it into the water. The ripples spread. Riku followed, dropping his own stone into the stream. Their game had returned. For a long while they played back and forth, stone after stone. The sound of splashes and laughter filled the air. At one point, Terran tried to skip a flat stone across the surface. It hopped once, twice before sinking. He clapped his hands, proud of his success. Riku watched closely. He picked up a flat stone and tried the same. His throw was clumsy, and the stone sank with a single splash. Riku gave a frustrated chirp, but Terran laughed kindly. He picked up another stone, showed Riku how he held it, and then flicked it across the water again. This time it skipped 3 times before sinking. Riku's eyes lit with interest. He tried again, mimicking the motion as best as his claws could. The stone bounced once, then twice before sinking. Riku gave a loud chirp of delight. The bond between them grew quickly. They played not only with stones but also with roots and sticks. Terran showed Riku how to balance on a fallen log, arms spread wide for balance. Riku copied him, spreading his claws and wobbling as he walked along the log. When he almost fell, Terran reached out and steadied him, and both laughed. As the days passed, their meetings became a quiet routine. Each morning, Terran found a way to slip from the village, and each morning, Riku hurried from his nest toward the stream. They discovered more games. Sometimes they raced along the water's edge. Terran's legs were longer, but Riku was quick and nimble, darting through the grass. Sometimes they dug in the soft soil, making shapes and patterns. Other times they simply sat together, watching the sky and listening to the world. Though they did not share the same words, they understood one another. A laugh, a chirp, a wave of a hand, a flick of a tail, all these were enough to show joy. Riku began to feel stronger. His steps became more confident, and his heart no longer sank when the other hatchlings ignored him. He had a friend. That was enough. Terran too felt different. While the other human children played within the fences, he had found something beyond, something new and exciting. He had a secret that filled him with joy. He did not tell his parents, for he feared they would forbid him from going. He kept the meetings as his own treasure. One day, clouds gathered in the sky and the wind blew stronger than usual. Terran arrived at the stream to find Riku already waiting. The hatchling had found a bright red flower and carried it in his claws. When he saw Terran, he offered the flower. Terran took it with a wide smile, placing it carefully in his pouch. He then gave Riku a smooth white stone he had carried from the village. The hatchling turned it over in his claws, chirping happily. The storm soon passed, but the memory of that exchange remained. It was no longer only games they shared, but also gifts, tokens of their bond. Yet not everything was simple. One afternoon, when Riku returned late to his nest, one of the older hatchlings hissed at him. "You are always gone," the older one said. "You never play with us. You hide by yourself." Riku lowered his head and did not answer. He could not explain. How could they understand what he had found by the stream? In the village, Terran's parents also noticed his absences. "Where do you go every morning?" his mother asked. Terran only smiled and said he liked walking by the river. His father frowned but did not press further. Still, Terran knew he would have to be careful. Despite the small shadows of doubt, their friendship only deepened. One evening, as the suns lowered and the sky turned orange, Terran and Riku sat quietly by the water. They did not play or race or dig. They simply watched the stream flow. Terran skipped one last stone and Riku chirped softly in response. Neither wanted to leave, but both knew the day was ending. As Terran stood to go, he placed his hand gently on Riku's head. Riku closed his eyes, enjoying the touch. The boy smiled, then walked back toward the village. Riku remained by the stream, the warmth of the moment still in his chest. He no longer felt like the weakest hatchling. He no longer felt alone. He had found a companion, one who accepted him as he was. The valley no longer seemed so wide or so empty. It had become a place filled with laughter, ripples, and friendship. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Riku dreamed of skipping stones and balancing on logs. In another dome far away, Terran dreamed of bright eyes and happy chirps. Though their worlds were different, they had begun to share a story together. The days had grown warmer, and the valley was filled with buzzing insects and long grass swaying in the sun. The stream where Terran and Riku met had become their secret world. Every morning they came with bright eyes, eager to share games and laughter. Terran had grown better at skipping stones. Sometimes he could make one hop across the water 4 or 5 times before it sank. Riku had grown stronger too. He was no longer clumsy when he ran along the roots. His legs carried him faster, his tail balanced him better, and his claws dug into the soil with confidence. The friendship gave both boy and hatchling a courage they did not know they carried. But beyond the joy, the land itself was not safe. The Kura elders had often warned their young about the dangers of the valley. There were hunters in the tall grass, quick and silent. There were great beasts in the skies, their wings wide enough to block the sun. Even the river, calm and bright at times, could turn wild and sweep away the careless. Riku had heard these warnings many times. Terran had heard his parents' warnings too. Yet when they were together, both sometimes forgot to be afraid. One morning, Terran brought a small basket of food from the village. He shared dried fruit with Riku, who sniffed at it curiously before tasting it. The hatchling's eyes lit up with delight at the sweetness, and Terran laughed. They ate together by the water's edge, enjoying the warmth of the suns. When the food was finished, Terran pointed toward the forest. "Let's go there," he said softly. Even though he knew Riku did not understand human words. He pointed again and began walking. Riku tilted his head. He had never gone far into the forest, for the elders had warned of dangers inside. Yet when he looked at Terran's eager smile, he chirped and followed. Together they stepped beyond the stream, leaving behind the place that had always felt safe. The forest was filled with shadow and sound. Tall trees reached high, their branches spreading wide, their leaves filtering the sunlight. Strange calls echoed between the trunks. Insects whirred. The air smelled of damp earth and green moss. Terran looked around with wide eyes, amazed. Riku stayed close, his tail flicking nervously. They explored slowly, stopping to look at small flowers and curious stones. Terran bent to pick up a feather as long as his arm, dropped from some great bird above. Riku sniffed at it, his eyes sharp. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became. Even the insects seemed to hush. Then a shadow passed over them. Terran froze. Riku lifted his head, scales prickling. Above the trees, a great shape circled. Its wings were stretched wide, dark against the bright sky. Its cry echoed through the valley, sharp and hungry. It was a drith. The drith was one of the deadliest hunters of the skies. The Kura elders spoke of them with fear. They could dive faster than an arrow, snatching prey with claws sharp as blades. Even the strongest adults avoided them. And now one circled above the forest, its eyes searching. Terran's legs trembled. He looked up, heart beating fast. He had never seen such a beast so close. Riku felt the same fear, but his instinct drove him to act. He nudged Terran with his snout, pushing him toward the rocks at the edge of the trees. The boy hesitated, frozen in terror. The drith's shadow passed over them again, closer this time. Riku hissed loudly, his small body bristling. He knew he could not fight the beast, but he could distract it. He spread his claws wide, making himself seem larger, and let out the fiercest cry he could. The drith tilted its wings and began to dive. The air roared as it dropped faster and faster, its claws outstretched. Riku shoved Terran again, this time harder. The boy stumbled toward the rocks, his fear breaking enough for him to move. He saw a narrow crack between the stones, just wide enough for him to slip inside. He dropped to his knees and scrambled in, pressing his back against the cold stone as the shadow swept past. The drith struck the ground with a scream, claws tearing at the earth where they had been. Riku darted to the side, his tail whipping, his small body moving quick as lightning. The beast turned its head, eyes burning with hunger. Riku hissed again, trying to pull its gaze away from the crack where Terran hid. For a moment the forest was filled with sound, the flapping of wings, the cries of predator and hatchling, the rustle of leaves. Terran peered out from the crack, his heart pounding. He wanted to call out, but his voice stuck in his throat. The drith spread its wings again, ready to strike. Riku stood his ground. His claws dug into the soil. His chest rose and fell. Fear filled him, but he did not move. He would not let the beast reach the boy. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the drith gave a final screech and lifted into the air. Perhaps it sensed other prey elsewhere. Perhaps it grew bored of the tiny hatchling that dared to face it. Whatever the reason, its great wings beat the air, and it rose high above the trees before gliding away. Silence returned to the forest. Riku stood trembling, his legs weak, but he had not fled. Terran crawled out from the crack, his face pale. He ran to Riku, kneeling beside him. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice shaking. He reached out and placed his arms gently around the hatchling. Riku chirped softly, leaning against him. For a long time they stayed that way, the danger fading but the memory burning bright. Both had felt fear, yet both had acted in their own way. Terran had trusted Riku enough to move when pushed. Riku had found a courage deep inside that he had never known. When they finally walked back to the stream, neither spoke. They did not need to. Their bond had been tested and it had grown stronger. That evening, when Terran returned to the village, his parents noticed the dirt on his clothes, the scratch on his arm. They asked questions, but Terran only said he had been exploring. He could not tell them about Riku or the great beast. He knew they would forbid him from leaving again. In the Kura nest, Riku limped back quietly. The elders saw the dust on his scales, the tremor in his steps. They thought he had simply wandered too far again. No one asked questions, and Riku gave no answers. But in his heart, he carried the memory of standing before the drith. That night, both boy and hatchling lay awake. Terran thought of the shadow in the sky, the rush of wings, the safety he had found in a small crack between stones. He also thought of Riku's brave hiss, of the way the hatchling had refused to run. Riku thought of the fear he had felt, the strength he had discovered, and the warmth of the boy's arms around him afterward. They were no longer just playmates. They were more. They were bound by a secret shared in the forest, a moment of danger that had revealed the strength of their friendship. From that day on, the stream was not only their playground, it was their meeting ground, their shelter, and their promise. Whenever they looked at the water, they remembered that courage could rise even in the smallest hearts. And though the valley still held many dangers, neither felt quite as alone as before. The valley had changed since the day of the drith. Though the danger had passed, its memory still lived inside Terran and Riku. They no longer looked at the sky without caution. They no longer played in the forest without listening carefully to every sound. Yet their bond was deeper than before. Every meeting at the stream carried a new weight, as if the two now shared not only laughter but also something greater, something carved by fear and courage. But outside their secret place, both worlds had begun to notice. In the human village, Terran's mother grew worried. She saw the dirt on his shoes each evening, the scratches on his arms, the grass tangled in his hair. She asked him where he went, and Terran only smiled and said he liked to walk by the river. His father frowned at the answer. "The land is wild," he warned. "You should not wander alone." Terran nodded, but the next day he slipped out again. He could not stop himself. The stream was calling and Riku was waiting. Among the Kura, the elders also grew suspicious. They noticed that Riku often left the nest when the others were playing. He returned late with the smell of water on his scales and strange scratches on his legs. The older hatchlings hissed at him and asked why he disappeared so often. Riku only chirped softly and looked away. He could not explain. They would never understand. The days went on and the friendship grew stronger. Terran brought small gifts from the village: smooth stones, bright cloth, dried fruit. Riku shared feathers, flowers, and shiny shells from the river. They laughed and played, but always with care, for both knew the danger of being discovered. One afternoon the sky was heavy with clouds, and the wind carried a sharp edge. Terran and Riku sat by the stream, building a small pile of stones. They tried to balance one stone upon another, creating towers that often toppled. Terran laughed each time the stones fell, and Riku chirped in delight. But in the distance, a pair of human children wandered close to the stream. They were chasing one another, running beyond the safe edge of the village. Their laughter echoed through the valley. Terran heard it first. He turned, eyes wide. Riku's tail flicked nervously. The two children stopped when they saw Terran sitting with the hatchling. At first they froze. Then one of them pointed. "What is that?" the child called. Terran's heart pounded. He stood quickly, blocking their view of Riku. "It is nothing," he said. "Go back to the village, but children are not so easily turned away." They stepped closer, their eyes wide with curiosity. Riku hissed softly, backing toward the grass. Terran shook his head. "Go," he repeated firmly. The children frowned. They looked once more, then turned and ran back toward the village. Terran's heart sank. He knew they would tell. That evening, whispers spread among the humans. The children spoke of Terran with a strange, scaled creature by the river. Some adults laughed, thinking it only a story, but others frowned. They knew the valley was filled with creatures, some dangerous, some unpredictable. To hear that a boy was playing with one filled them with unease. Terran's father asked him about it at dinner. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Did you meet something by the river?" Terran lowered his eyes. His hand gripped the edge of the table. He wanted to tell the truth, to explain that the creature was not dangerous, that it was his friend. But he also feared what would happen if he spoke, so he whispered, "No, I was only skipping stones." His father's eyes were sharp, but his mother placed a hand on his shoulder. "He is only a boy," she said softly. Perhaps the others imagined things. The talk faded, but the worry remained. Meanwhile, among the Kura, the elders too had begun to murmur. One of the older hatchlings had followed Riku one morning, curious about his secret walks. He returned later, hissing to the others that Riku had been seen near the river, near the place where humans roamed. The elders frowned. "The humans are not our kind," one said. "The young should stay away from them." Riku heard their words, but he could not turn away. When morning came, he went to the stream once more, and there was Terran, waiting with a nervous smile. They sat together quietly that day, not playing, not laughing as much. The memory of the children who had seen them hung heavy in the air. Terran looked at Riku and whispered, "They may not like this." Riku chirped softly, leaning close. His bright eyes seemed to say, "I do not care." The days that followed were tense. Terran's parents kept a closer eye on him. The Kura elders watched Riku with suspicion. But still they found ways to meet. The stream became even more important, their secret world hidden from the eyes of others. One evening a storm swept across the valley. The wind howled and rain fell in heavy sheets. The stream rose, water rushing fast and wild. Terran had been kept inside the dome by his parents, who feared the storm. Riku, however, slipped from his nest and crept to the stream, searching for his friend. He waited in the rain, chirping softly, but Terran did not come. The water roared louder, and lightning split the sky. For the first time since their bond had formed, Riku felt the weight of true loneliness again. He curled beneath a rock, shivering, wondering if the boy would ever return. When the storm finally passed, the valley was quiet, but the stream had grown wider. carrying branches and broken roots in its current. Riku stared at it with sad eyes. Would Terran still come? Or would the humans now forbid him forever? The next morning, when the suns rose, Terran found his chance. His parents were busy repairing the garden damaged by the storm. He slipped away, running as fast as he could. His feet splashed in the wet grass until he reached the stream. There was Riku sitting by the water with drooping tail. The hatchling's eyes lit up when he saw the boy. He chirped loudly, rushing forward. Terran laughed with relief and hugged him. In that moment, both knew they could not give up their friendship. No matter what others thought, no matter what rules were spoken, they needed each other. But they also knew something else now. Their bond would not stay hidden forever. The world around them was beginning to notice, and sooner or later both humans and Kura would force them to choose. The clearing was filled with silence. The hatchling stood behind Tom, its small body trembling as the elders of its kind stared at the strange sight. On the other side, Tom's parents looked just as unsettled. The adults from both worlds carried heavy fear in their hearts, but the two children only saw friendship. Tom's voice was small but steady. He held the little ball in his hands, the same ball he and the hatchling had used to play many times before. He lifted it up for everyone to see. "He is my friend," Tom said. His voice shook a little, but he spoke with courage. "We only play. We don't hurt anyone. We just laugh together." The hatchling tilted its head as if understanding. It stepped out from behind him. Its scales caught the light of the sun, showing colors of green and silver. The hatchling made a small call, a soft sound that echoed through the clearing. It then walked forward and gently placed one clawed hand on Tom's shoulder. The gesture was simple, but the meaning was clear. Gasps came from both sides. The alien elders whispered among themselves. One of them, tall and wise, shook his head in disbelief. "A hatchling does not show trust so easily," he said. "This child trusts the human." Tom's parents exchanged looks. His mother wanted to run to him and pull him back, but she stopped. She had never seen her son so firm, so protective. She realized he was not in danger. He was defending a friend. The silence grew heavier. Both sides waited, uncertain of what should happen next. Then Tom's father took a careful step forward. He looked at the hatchling, then at the elders. His voice was calm. "We were afraid," he admitted. "We thought the hatchling might hurt our son. But it is clear now. They are just children. They found joy together where we saw only difference." The hatchling's mother moved closer. She bent her long neck down to her young one, watching its eyes. The hatchling chirped and pressed closer to Tom, showing no fear. A slow realization filled the alien mother's heart. If her young trusted this small human so deeply, then perhaps there was nothing to fear. The elders still looked unsure, but the hatchling's gesture had broken the wall of doubt. One of the older aliens finally raised his staff and spoke. His voice was deep and his words carried weight. "This bond is unusual," he said, "but maybe it is not wrong. Perhaps the young see what we do not. Perhaps they are the first step to a better path." Tom's mother wiped her eyes. She could not believe what she was hearing. She reached for her husband's hand and whispered, "He is making history without even knowing it." The tension in the clearing slowly began to melt away. The adults from both sides lowered their guards. No weapons were raised, no harsh words were spoken. Only the sound of the wind and the heartbeat of something new remained. The hatchling, sensing the shift, picked up the ball from Tom's hand and rolled it toward one of the alien elders. The elder blinked in surprise. He had never been invited to play by a hatchling, let alone through a human toy. Carefully, the elder nudged it back. Tom laughed, and the hatchling squealed with delight. The simple act made the adults share their first small smiles. From that day on, things began to change. The next morning, Tom was allowed to meet the hatchling openly. No more sneaking, no more hiding in the tall grass or behind the trees. Both families agreed to let them play, but always within sight. At first, the elders still watched closely, but soon they realized there was no danger. What they saw was two young lives teaching each other without fear. Tom taught the hatchling how to throw the ball higher, how to run in circles, and how to jump across puddles after the rain. The hatchling, in return, taught Tom to climb the low rock ledges near the alien colony, and how to mimic the calls of birds that lived high in the trees. They did not share words, but they shared laughter. That was more than enough. Other children began to notice. At first, they stood far away, too shy to come close. But when they saw Tom and the hatchling playing, curiosity overcame their fear. A human girl named May was the first to step forward. She brought a skipping rope, and when she skipped, the hatchling tilted its head and then tried to hop in rhythm. Everyone laughed when it tripped, but the hatchling stood proudly, happy to try again. The next day, 2 young hatchlings joined as well. They were nervous at first, clicking their tongues with unease. But when the ball rolled to them, they pushed it back and the game welcomed them in. Soon, human children and alien hatchlings were running together, chasing each other and filling the field with cheerful noise. The adults watched from the edge. What they saw amazed them. The barriers that had once seemed impossible to cross were falling apart under the simple games of children. There was no fear, no suspicion, only joy. Tom's father said quietly, "If our children can play together, maybe we can learn to live together." The alien elder nodded. "It begins with trust. They show us the way." Days turned into weeks. The games grew larger. Sometimes there were races. Sometimes they built small shelters out of sticks and leaves. Sometimes they simply lay under the wide sky and pointed at clouds. Every moment built a new bond between their 2 peoples. The hatchling grew stronger and taller. Its wings, once small and soft, began to spread wider. But even as it grew, it never forgot the first friend who had played with it. Tom remained at its side, just as happy as he had been the very first day. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with red and gold, Tom and the hatchling stood at the center of the field. Around them, human parents and alien elders gathered. The ball lay between the 2 friends, worn from so many games but still holding the marks of their joy. The elder raised his staff once again and declared, "This friendship is no longer a secret. It is a bridge. It is a lesson. We must learn from it so our future will be brighter." Cheers rose from both sides. Humans clapped their hands. Aliens clicked their tongues in harmony. The sound joined together like a new song. Tom turned to the hatchling and smiled. "See? They understand now." The hatchling chirped, lifting its wings high in the air. It leaned against him gently, as if saying it understood too. That night, for the first time, both communities shared a meal together. Humans brought bread and fruit. The aliens brought roasted roots and glowing berries. The children sat together in the center, eating, laughing, and showing the world that peace was not only possible but real. Tom's mother whispered to her son as she watched him, "You gave him a friend, and in return you gave us all hope." The hatchling's parent said softly to Tom's father, "Your child is brave. Because of him, our children will not grow in fear. They will grow in friendship." The stars came out above them, shining over 2 species who had once lived apart. Now they sat side by side, all because a lonely hatchling and a little boy had chosen to play instead of fear. The story of Tom and the hatchling spread far across the colony. Other human settlements and other alien clans heard of it. At first, many doubted. But when they visited and saw the children playing together with their own eyes, they too began to believe. A single friendship had grown into something greater. It became a symbol of what was possible. It showed that even the smallest hands, even the youngest hearts, could build a bridge that no elder or leader had ever dared to try. And so, in the wide field where the first ball had been rolled, children continued to laugh. Tom and the hatchling stood at the center, never alone again. Their friendship had not only given them joy, it had given 2 worlds a future.